project, I use a 14 by 14 inch square frame that I picked up at a garage sale. I removed the backing, I removed the clips, I removed the glass, and then I took Elmer's glue and put it around the perimeter of the back of the frame where the glass would sit. Now, I do not use the clear Elmer's glue anymore. I use regular Elmer's glue because the clear Elmer's glue is too thin, too runny, and I don't believe it adheres the glass to the frame as well as the other Elmer's glue. Then I replaced the glass and I put Elmer's glue around the perimeter of the back of the frame one more time. This serves two purposes. It helps to hold the glass in place and helps to prevent any resin leaks if you put resin on the other side. It's to dry overnight and sometimes up to 24 hours depending on how much glue you use. Then I took painter's tape and put that around the back of the perimeter just as an extra precaution against resin leaks. Next, I started going through my amber tumbled glass. This is glass I pick up at garage sales and thrift stores, break up, and tumble in my tumbler sometimes up to a week. This is what we call faux sea glass. So I just went through it and picked out the ones I wanted for my palm tree trunk. Next, I had drawn up a snowman, and you guys know how well I draw, not very well, so I used 3 round cups in different sizes to make the snowman on this paper. And then what I did was I flipped it over and I taped it to the back of the frame. Next, I took these vases that I've picked up at garage sales and thrift stores. Before, I used to pass them by all the time, but now I've realized that they will make wonderful Christmas trees. They also make wonderful palm tree branches, and that's what I'm using it for. Because the glass is green all the way through, the diameter is small, and it's very thick glass, so that when you nip it, the way I am, it will stand up on its own. So thicker glass is easier to get it to stand up than thinner glass, just so you know. So anyway, I just take the nipper tool and I go all the way around the perimeter. And there is one area that's really narrow and it's hard to kind of nip, but once you get past that, it goes pretty smoothly. And if some of the chunks are too big, you can go ahead and thin them out, and you can see how those all stand up by themselves. And I went ahead and I ended up nipping 2 of these vases. And I always worry about this glass being so sharp and people cutting themselves on it, and some of these I'm going to be making for gifts. So I decided I would try to tumble it for just overnight, anywhere from 6 to 12 hours, and it came out beautiful. So it still looks like the broken glass, but it is not like sea glass. You know how if you tumble sea glass for like a week, it gets real foggy and the edges are real smoothed out and rounded, and I really didn't want that because I wanted them to be able to stand up. And this is only after 11 hours, and they're not sharp at all. The points aren't sharp, the edges aren't sharp, you can run your finger along it. It worked out perfect. Next, I mixed up my resin. The resin I use for this project is art resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio resin that you mix together in a cup, mixing it slowly for 3 minutes to help prevent bubbles, scraping the sides and the bottom to ensure thorough mixing. After I was done mixing the resin up, I poured the sand into a separate cup and then poured the resin into the sand. Then I mixed it up, and you really want a very, very thick consistency. And in the end, I probably should have put less resin in it or more sand, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So after I was done mixing it all up, I started putting it on the glass. I started by putting it along the bottom where the beach would be and just kind of spreading it out a little, and then I started putting it on the snowman, and I just put it toward the center of the circles because it kind of spreads out. So you'll see in a minute that some of the resin actually leaks out from underneath and makes like a halo effect all the way around the snowman and towards the top of the beach. So like I said, this was a little bit too thin. If I had to do it again, I would put either more sand in it or less resin, one of the two. But pretty much now it stays the way that I put it. The sand does, but the resin is what leaks out. Next, I start to decorate the snowman. And what I did was I took one of these long shells and used a nipper and kind of cut it along the back so it would lay a little bit flatter for his nose. And then I took 3 tiny starfish for the buttons down the front of him, and then some tiny little shells to make his mouth, and 2 little shells to make his eyes. And actually later on I come back with a little marker and put 2 black dots in the middle because his face isn't real visible. Then I use my kitchen torch to go ahead and get rid of a lot of bubbles, and it does create a lot of bubbles mixing it with the sand, and you can start to see the resin leaking out, kind of a halo effect. I'm looking for some pieces of driftwood to cut into arms for my snowman, or my Sandman I should say. And I'm just kind of messing around, making a mess on my rug down there, trying to cut some pieces. And this is a heavy duty scissors that I was using for the crystal rhinestones. And then here I am making some arms, and again you can see that resin leaking out around there, making that kind of halo effect. And I do plop some more sand down on top of the arms just to hold them down. And then I take this, I guess it's for miniature Christmas trees, these lights. They're not real lights, they're just faux lights, and I want this to be set in the resin that I am leaving overnight, so I kind of put it in his hand there, and then I'm putting down a bunch of little shells. And the reason that I'm putting the string of lights in his hands now to set in the resin, so when I do put the palm tree up tomorrow, the day after, it will hold there. It won't keep on pulling out of his arms. And I figured that would be the easiest way to do it. Leave it to dry overnight. So this is the next day, and you can see how all the resin has leaked out there, but it's all dry. And I start setting up my palm tree by putting my faux sea glass up for the trunk of it. And when I did it this first time, and I ended up taking it off and putting it back on, you'll see in a minute, but I kind of made it a little bit taller, and I almost wish that I had left it taller like that because for some reason I guess I was messing around with the lights, and I ended up taking the tree back off and then putting it back on again, and it ended up being a little bit shorter. As you can see here, my tree ends up a little bit shorter. Now I go ahead and I start putting the resin on top, and I kind of have the lights pulled to the side. I don't know if you can tell, because I figured that it will be easier to put the lights on, the string of lights on, after the resin is on, because I figure it will stick to it better then. So what I do is I go ahead and I start putting the resin over the glass first, then around the sides and up into the corners to assure that everything is covered. And then I go ahead and fill in everywhere else. And then when I'm done with that, I start messing around with the lights. And I don't know if you can tell, but the lights are kind of spaced out far. So I take some other little lights, I cut them off another string, and I add them to the existing string of lights so that it looks like there's more lights on there. And you can see me right now putting on the little lights one by one. And these things, I tell you, I mess with these for about 20 minutes because they really did not want to stay where you put them. So it is best if you wait till the resin has become a little bit sticky. It probably would be easier. And then I go ahead and I cut off the strand there, and I use my kitchen torch to get rid of some of the bubbles. And I want to say it's probably in your best interest to, here I am putting some coconuts on. I used 3 little beads, and I put 3 coconuts up at the top of the palm tree. I thought that looked cute. It's best to use the torch before you put the lights on, because you can mess up the string of lights, because that's plastic. And then I decided at the last minute he needs a little hat to make him look more Christmassy. So the red glass that I'm using is actually the Ashland decorative filler, and the white glass is the glass from Hobby Lobby, the mosaic accents that you find over in the stained glass department in Hobby Lobby. And then I go ahead and make just kind of straighten it out as best I can. So at this point I thought I was done, and I was actually going to do my ending video, and I thought there is just something missing on there. So I decided to take it back to the resin room and add a few things. I picked up this little Believe sign from the Dollar Tree. It came in a package of 3. One said Believe, Peace, and Joy was the third one. And I used the Peace one in another video that I did. And so I went ahead and I painted it white. And before it dried, I took some iridescent glitter and sprinkled glitter all over it. And then when that was dry, I kind of shook it off, and doesn't that look beautiful? I think it turned out so pretty and glittery. So I took that and I laid that on my, the very top of my little picture there. And now I'm kind of glad I didn't make the palm tree any bigger, because otherwise it wouldn't have fit. And then I took some blue glass and made the water. Now, why didn't I think to do the water before? This is a beach scene. And it really added some pretty color to it by doing that. And then I went ahead and I mixed up the resin all over again and started again. Put it all over the words and all over the glass. And unfortunately, when you do this, you have to re-resin the whole piece. You don't need to re-resin the snowman or the beach or the palm tree, but any of the clear areas you have to cover with resin, or you'll see where it starts and stops. It just won't look right. And like I said again, I just kind of smooth it all out. Use the kitchen torch to get rid of the bubbles. And again, this has to sit on a flat level surface overnight. After 12 hours, you can usually touch it, but art resin takes a full 72 hours to cure at temperatures between 72 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It's in your best interest to cover it with a dust cover when you're finished. And then you can see I decided to add a scarf. That's another thing I forgot to put on my Sandman. So I put a red scarf using the same Ashland decorative filler that I used for the hat, and the little white stones that I got from Hobby Lobby for the end of the scarf. And I also decided to put a little more blue on it, so I sprinkled some more blue glass. Again, this is the Ashland decorative filler that can be found at Michael's, and just covered that with a little more resin. And I think that's really about it. So used the kitchen torch again and decided that would be good. I'm so glad I ended up adding everything to it. Hey everyone, done again. I don't know what I was thinking before when I didn't put any blue down there for the water. It had such pretty color. And I love that I accidentally left that lower. It really should be a taller palm tree, I guess. But I like how the Believe sign came out on the top. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, give it a thumbs up. It helps the channel. And if you want to be notified of future videos, go ahead and subscribe. And I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching.